Hi there.
Hello.
Thanks
Of
for agreeing to chat with me again. I know
course. I'll talk to
it's
you every day.
it's been a while. I mean, like the one I did an interview with before where we talked about what did we talk? We talked about the artwork that you had in Chester County Studio Tour.
Yeah.
And that was like a totally different conversation. And I'm like, I want to interview Tina again because there's so much more that we can talk about.
Yeah.
Um, And so this whole conversation was sprung because Tina is an artist and a photographer and also, really helps brands through their photography. I don't know if you want to speak about like succinctly what you do real quick, and then I can kind of jump in.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. So my goal with product photography is really to help brands of all different sizes kind of find their footing when it comes to photography and kind of create a foundation for them as like a jumping off point, especially for brands who have been doing photography on their own for years. And I'm the person that you come to that's like, I have too many hats, I'm wearing too many hats. I'm ready to go to the next level. And I'm like, give it to me. Let me hold this for you. And so I'm really enjoying helping people tell their unique brand stories through the images that we create together. That's
Yeah.
pretty much where I like to live in that little area there.
It's so awesome what you do. I was in a mastermind with you first. I think I met you, I don't know, it was like 2020
2020,
something. Yeah.
crazy.
And which is the funniest time to meet someone, but yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
And then we in that mastermind, I think I hired you that year to help me with like some print mock-ups, right?
Yeah, yeah, we did some mock-ups. We worked together for Teresa's first, I think,
Yep,
right? And then you and I did a few print mock-ups for you for your brand.
that's right. Right. You did
Yeah.
that gallery wall, which I still love that gallery.
Yeah, that was
That
fun.
image is awesome. And then let's see. And then a year after that, you helped me in my house kind of capture the story of my art, which was an amazing transformative experience. And then last year you did those the ones in my studio, which was
Yeah,
that's what do you call that? A storytelling session?
that's a storyteller session. So we did that last year, and then this year, I just like that we're working together like every year. Let's just keep
I
doing
know.
that.
Well, it's like I can't even explain it in words, which I know you can relate to, but when I'm getting ready to market myself, like I can create a logo. When I create a logo for an event or something, I always feel like 20 times better about it. I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to promote it. Well, it's the same kind of
Yeah,
thing with like having the right images to tell the story of like, especially if you're not somebody who wants to be on social media all the time, like having that image that tells the story and speaks those like thousand words without you having to actually do it is just like such a great feeling.
yeah.
And so I think like I value it more and more and more. So like each time we work together, I'm like, wow, this is awesome. It feels like I'm up leveling a little bit. So
It totally is. And like your like foundational story stays the same, but the way that you want to articulate that changes as we get older, as your business becomes more mature and your goals change. And so being able to create photography to reflect your business like what it is right now, I think is like super important for everybody. And it's just a lot of fun for me to get to work with you and see like this evolution of Cynthia. So it's like really exciting for me to be a part of that with
oh,
you.
that's awesome. Yeah, the storytelling sessions that we did last year, I just want to clarify this with anyone who's thinking about like, oh, I need something like that. They were not product photography. They were like telling the story of like what I'm doing or the brand is doing. And so like you happen to get some photos of me, but it wasn't about like portrait photos.
No, for me, I'm really interested in the story and the process and the space where creatives are, doing their business. So for me, it's like these little moments of your day that I want to capture, and I love being able to showcase, your hands working on things and little trinkets and inspiration boards that people keep around their space. Like all of that is really interesting to me. And I think a lot of people feel they don't have a story to tell, but I guarantee every single one of you do.
Mhm.
And so it's my job to come in and like document that so that you can use those images to better help like flesh out that story. So it's not like a sitting portrait. Like that's not fun for me. It's not like a
It's not
those are
really fun for me
necessary.
either.
No, and like full transparency, like that's super awkward for me to be like, sit here and turn your head. I just wanna I love the feeling of discovering a moment or coming upon a moment. Like that's how I love taking trail walks, like when you're walking and then you find a little trail and you're like, oh, where does this go? And so I feel like I'm the same way when we do a storyteller session. Um, what happens if we do this and document that. So it's really about just you being in your space and me documenting it and not really changing a whole lot other than maybe like moving some things around so it's a little more aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, I remember
But
actually when you got
yeah,
here, I was like still getting ready and you started taking pictures and that was not like what I imagined that you would do. And I love those pictures. Like
yeah,
it was me getting ready for you to come and
yeah.
you're like, up I'm taking pictures.
And
Um,
like outside
yeah,
the studio, like you were putting flowers in. I'm like, well, that's fun. Let's
yeah,
photograph
that's what you
that.
captured that I can't even tell you, like, it just means a lot to me that I have those photos because that's the real thing. Like, that's what I'd be doing. And so,
Exactly.
and yeah, and those photos got me into Where Women Create. And so
Right.
and I know like you've had other people who similar
I
things happened, right?
yeah. Kayla Ackelson. She was also in Where Women Create, or was she in what?
Or
I
in
think
her
she.
studio. Somebody was in her studio.
It was in her studio. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so many good magazines. So my
Yeah.
goal is just to like I want to get everybody in there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm
Tell the
working
story.
on it. Yeah.
So, okay, I have like a whole list of questions and I'm like, we
Oh,
haven't even touched on them. So I'm gonna start diving in. So I don't
okay.
want to keep you here all day because I'm like, I could just talk to you about whatever. So,
I know.
I think these are good for other people. So I would love to just like dive in. So the first one is how do you approach collaborative projects with clients, particularly when it comes to understanding and bringing their vision to life through photography? I would love to hear this.
I feel like it's really important for me to understand where they started and what they've been doing up until the point that we have a conversation where we have a discovery call. What initially draws somebody to a business, to deciding to open a business, and what is their inspiration behind that? And also like what are they selling? Are they services or products, things like that? Um, Using like a candle company for an example, a lot of people have like signature scents and they sort of draw inspiration, I find, from like nostalgia. I think a candle company is very nostalgic. And so I want to know like what kind of brought you to the scents that you're selling, the colors that you're using in your branding. And there's sort of this push and pull that happens. And so I want to make sure I'm honoring like where they were and where they want to go by asking really specific questions. Everybody who works with me gets like a questionnaire. And so like the biggest question I feel like that unlocks that sort of like information is if your product owned a home, what would that home look like? Like
Mm,
what's the exterior of that home? Is it a cottage? Is it like a really modern home? Is it a loft? Like where are we living in your vision, in your world? And what are the things you're surrounding yourself with? So that really gives me an idea of like what their bigger overall dream is of their business. And then from that, I sort of like start getting visions in my head about it. And then I
that
can
makes
kind of
sense to
like,
me.
yeah, I can kind of like say, well, this is, you're talking and this is what I'm seeing. And generally like we're on the same point from get-go. And like when that
I
happens,
know. I'm like, Tina, how are you doing this? I like it
I
gets me
don't
like
know.
giddy. And I'm like, I almost feel like I'm like this clingy person with you all of a sudden because I get so excited about what you're doing that I'm like, I love you. And you're probably like, back up, people, because you
No.
literally like
Yeah.
get me. And I'm like, and that's your thing that you probably just get people like because you ask the right questions and you're like really listening and you're putting your like you said you're like envisioning things and so
Yeah.
that's like really taking you into a place that enables you to collaborate in a really beautiful way.
Yeah, of course.
I love that. um you know what I mean though. I'm like,
Oh
Tina, this
yeah.
is
Oh
amazing.
yeah. We could do this every day.
um so yeah, okay, then some of the other things, there were so many things I could pull on from what you just said, but I'll keep going because I know
Okay.
we're gonna have more to talk about. So what are some of the key elements you consider when styling and photographing products for clients, especially in terms of how they align with a client's brand?
Yeah. So anything that I do really starts with color, whether
Mhm.
it's the artwork that I'm creating or it's the color that we're going to be using in photography. So if there is a brand style that they're following, I want to know what that is, and I will kind of pull colors for backgrounds like painted surfaces or textured surfaces that can sort of echo that in their branding. So when you come to their website, it's all sort of like layered in there.
Mhm.
So it's really important for me because I think, color affects our mood. It affects how we see a product, like photographing. I'm going to use candles again because it's so easy. Like photographing a candle against a really dark background will elicit a different emotion than on a really, really light, neutral background? So it's
Right.
really about like, how do you want people to feel when they're looking at images of your products?
Mhm.
And based off of that, we can sort of go and start using color to create that foundation. And then we start bringing, like props in that will enhance the photo without like taking away from the product, which is like our goal is to make sure that's like the shining star of our image.
Yeah, that's funny because like when I'm doing a brand, I think of maybe like the different things that you're bringing in, the what do you like props that you're bringing in. I almost feel like that would be equivalent to like the texture of like a line or something in like a
Yeah,
brand.
exactly.
It's gonna
Exactly.
give this feeling and it can go like it could be too much or like too little depending on like the weight of it. And so I totally like I love the nuance of this and like I love the nuance of branding in general, but how you approach brands I think is kind of similar to how I approach the like logo design process where like when I'm doing something like that it's very nuanced. It's not just like okay, a one size fits all and this is my style and I'm just gonna create it based off of like I know this is what's best for you. It feels like you're really listening and then like yes you're obviously like putting your style into it and you're using like all of your expertise but it feels so layered of like different nuances that make it that brand's vision in a way or like
Totally.
I don't know if I'm explaining this properly, but even I feel for me, like every time I've worked with you, I knew there was like a missing piece that was like not helping, like that was hurting my brand in a way. And you've been able to help me elevate to bring that missing piece to life so that, yeah, so that I could be portrayed in a certain way, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, totally. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of parallels in what we do.
Yeah.
Um, and you have to pay attention to the details of that.
Yes.
'Cause that's what's
Details.
really important. And it's like one of my favorite things to do. So I'm glad I'm able to like continue doing it in different ways for different types of clients, which is like the fun part of it all.
It's a lot of work too. Like, I don't know how
Ton of
people
work.
view photography, but like we were working together for 3 days. This was like a couple weeks ago. And
Yeah.
by the third day, I was like, Tina, I'm done. And I wasn't even doing the work. And I knew she still had to go home and like do all the editing. And I was like, this
Yeah.
is a lot of work. Like this
Yeah. It's a
is,
lot.
and it needs to like be, and so something so magical. And like, I'm gonna share, I'll try to like throw one of my photos into this
Yeah.
video so you guys can see like what she just did for me. But like we had, I won't even get into that, like little things, but it was just so many different pieces and parts that went into it. And in order for that to happen, it was like she took this time to make it like the perfect moment, whether it was the light or, and it was like questions and then like, hey, like it was a lot of back and forth, a lot of iterating, and it was a lot of
Yeah.
like you like just going into your zone. And I just felt like, wow, this is like so valuable. It's not just, I already knew that, but like every time I work with you, I have like a new appreciation for like how much
Thank
value,
you.
you know,
That's really nice to hear. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. I
It's
mean,
a
I think
lot.
it's
It's a
like
lot.
worth talking about because
Yeah.
I think sometimes, especially with photography, people will be like, oh, it's so easy, like you just have a camera. And like, no, like there's so many layers that go into it. And if you value it, like you get what you pay for kind of a thing is what I feel.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. I
I had
agree.
to just say that because I was like, Like, wow, you did so much work
It's
and
a
I
ton.
appreciate it. Yeah, so our recent collaboration was focused on showcasing the styling possibilities of my work, meaning like I was trying to photograph my banners like these by myself and it just it just wasn't, like I don't have the skill set. And so I was like really looking for you to help me figure out how to portray it in a different way so that it was like showcased and you could see the styling possibilities. And I just wondered if, and I think everyone who has a product can relate to this. Like, can you walk us through your thought process and approach of like around that session, or like how do you think about that?
Yeah.
What matters in
And
terms of styling?
styling it all. I think there's a few different ways we can like approach that. And the biggest thing for me was continuing the look and feel of your brand, like making sure that whatever we did still felt like Cynthia, but that it also like felt like really fresh, not trendy, but sort of this classic look that can translate to different types of styles in people's homes. And so I
Mm.
think that's what's really nice about your banners is they can literally fit into any type of home decor style. But when we styled it, we wanted to still feel like part of Cynthia's world. So like keeping the dark greens with like we brought in the dresser, the brass elements, like these little interesting, like the little I always forget what it's called. The little candle guy, the little
Oh, the
panther,
snuffer.
the snuffer.
That guy
Putting
was
that in.
awesome.
Like when I saw that prop, I was like, this is Cynthia. I have
Yeah.
to get this. So just having these little moments of like Cynthia throughout the image, but then when you see it on your website or if people are seeing it on Pinterest, it's also going to inspire them to be like, oh, I can like my home can look like this too. And so that's what I want to do at the same time. Like I want to make sure I'm meeting your needs, but that we're also inspiring other people who are viewing the image.
Yeah.
Because it not only brings people to your product, but then it just gets another hand out there to inspire somebody to do something differently in their own world. So a little further reach is sort of like my goal.
Yeah.
When we're
Which I
talking
think
about
is really hard for the brand to achieve alone because they're seeing it from one perspective and like you're able to come in and see and like kind of
right.
close that loop of like how do you connect with the
Yep.
consumer? Um,
Yes, exactly.
and this question kind of is parallel to this, so you might have already feel like you answered it, but I said, in what ways do you feel like your photography can elevate a brand's presence, and how important is collaboration in achieving that?
Yeah, I think that for one of my like, on my side, like active listening is like really important because I want to make sure that you're feeling heard and that it's being translated in a way that feels correct and feels like something you can build upon. Um, it's just one of those things where I want to make sure I'm doing justice of the brand, but at the same time, like I said, that further reach of like connecting with a consumer is just also super important. And that's something that's like not necessarily part of our talking. Like I'm not really going to be saying that to everybody, but I'm sort of like doing it at the same time, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's like there's probably a lot of those things that you're doing without talking about that are actually achieving like that elevated
Yeah,
experience
yeah,
through the
yeah.
brand
I guess
presence.
I don't want to like freak people out with how many things I'm thinking about during the photo shoot. So I'm like, here are three things I'm thinking about when really it's 10.
Yeah. Well, and then I think sometimes there's just like not words for what we're doing because we're
That's
not,
true.
it's like
It's
subconscious,
intuitive.
it's intuitive. You're just doing it. And so then
Yeah,
naming that is like hard to do, but it's actually
yeah,
useful because I think then people they can be like, oh yeah, I actually need that. Like that's what I need.
that's
Yeah. So anything else that you wanted to share about the like elevating the brand's presence? I mean, I think we talked a lot about that, but if there's anything else you want
yeah,
to
I
share.
just I think it's just a really good idea to invest in well-made photography and especially if you were ready to go to that next step. Like nothing, I mean, we everything that we are buying starts with an image, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think at this point everybody can kind of tell the difference between like an okay photo and a really beautiful photo.
Yeah.
That wasn't always the case, say like 10, 12 years ago. Didn't really matter. And everyone knows that they need to get to that next level. So photography is the way to do that, I feel like.
Right. And then artful, like I feel like this is just art. Don't you say artful product
True.
photography? That
Yeah,
is
I
such a
kind
good
of take,
tagline for you.
yes, I take a more artful approach to product photography. I try to stay away from trends unless the trend happens to be something that will match this brand for years to come, then I will hop on that trend.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, some trends are like they're like gonna stand the test of time. Yeah.
yeah, and I think it's, there is some classic lighting trends out there and some that are not. And so I'm uh really particular about how I light for clients so that they each look different but noticeable. When you're scrolling, you
Hmm.
want to be caught by something, and that's my goal when we're doing product photography. And so to do that is to have like a little more artful hand in the lighting and the propping and the styling, and the color choices that we
Yeah.
use.
I love that. I also think this is worth mentioning, but I know you work with all different sized businesses, but I feel like as a sole proprietor, like someone who's really, representing my artwork, but then also like the branding work I do as a service, I run into a lot of insecurities, to be honest. And like these photographs, like when I received your photographs yesterday, I literally felt more confident. I was like, I
Yeah.
feel like I can like fly right now, which I know sounds like super corny, but no, it's true.
No,
Like
but I
you're
get it.
like, and I'm like, that is a beautiful thing. Now I know like not everyone's just like doing things solo, and so that might not translate to everyone. But I think even a marketing department could like really benefit from feeling a little more confidence in what they're putting out there. Um,
Totally.
and so I'll just say like that's one thing that I think is super valuable, like the level of confidence you have in promoting yourself when you get these images is just like you just can't, I can't even describe it. It's like what I
And
said, I can fly.
I love
Like,
that.
all right, I'm going. So
Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to share that. And then I wanted to ask, like, do you have, are there any projects that stick out to you as like memorable that have had a significant impact on both your work or like a client's brand, like one or the other or both?
That's a great question. I did a really full overhaul photo shoot at the end of last year, for a skincare brand. And it really forced me to be really particular about the lighting and the background that I used. And I just was able to take my time with it.
Mhm.
I had like 3 weeks to get this done before Christmas, and I was in the studio, and it really allowed me to kind of play with different lighting techniques that I'm now using now. I'm using them now.
Yeah.
Um, and there's like a smoothness, like a really beautiful elevated look to this particular photography that like I hadn't really reached yet, like in myself. Like I had really dug deep to get to this type of lighting. It's multiple lights. Like I try not to use more than two, three lights. I'm a studio photographer, so some of my photographs look like it's daylight or window light, but it's not. It's all studio lighting that like I've really worked hard to make it look like window lighting because I
Yeah.
find that's my favorite type of light. Um, but you can't always use a window. So I tend to use 2, 3 lights at most, and in this particular shoot, I was up to 5 lights, which
Wow.
can get really overwhelming, but the end result was just, like it was stunning, and I felt so proud of myself, and it just reminded me that, like, there is no end to the creativity, that it's there, you just kinda have to, like, be a little patient and let it evolve. And I don't think I could have done that job 2 years ago. There's no way I would have had the confidence to, like, take that on. But having those 2 years of experience or, at that point well, yeah, it was 2, 3 years since I got my own studio again.
Hmm.
I was able to, like, get to this point, and I still look at those photos and I'm like, "That's gorgeous." I'm really very proud of that. And it just kind of changed the depth that I could go in my own creativity, like, for the rest of my work.
Right. I love that what you said about how like there's no cap to the creativity because like that's what I
Yeah.
was thinking while you were talking. I'm like, it's just like you just keep getting better and it's like that's it's just never gonna stop. Like you're just gonna keep
Yeah.
but like it's really fun to watch and then also to be able to like have those wins that you're talking about and then be able to apply them to every new project and then learn something new and then in the next project. There's something really cool about that too. Like,
Super cool. Yeah, yeah. And it helps that the client, she was ecstatic with it. She had a brand new brand with another designer I like to work with who's based in Australia. So that was kind of fun. Like our calls are at 7 p.m. my time because it's like, I don't know, 10 a.m. their time. I don't know the time difference between here and Australia, but it was just like one of those collaborative moments, like working with a designer, and which is it's so nice because a little of the pressure is taken off of me with some of the like reference for like the type of photography that they're thinking about. Um, and then just being able to work together in tandem is like so much fun. And it
yes.
turned out really, really, really beautifully.
Yeah, I
So
imagine like working with designers has got to be fun for you. I mean, it's definitely got to be fun for the designers too, because it's
oh
so much
yeah.
fun for me.
Oh yeah. I really, really love it. It's just I tend to do it all myself, right? So I like having someone to bounce ideas off of that can speak my language a little bit.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
fun.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I have just a couple more things. Are
Okay.
you okay on time?
Yeah, I'm great.
Okay. So the other thing I wanted to ask was like, how do you see the role of photography evolving in the realm of branding and marketing, and especially for artists and creatives? Because I think
I
there's a lot happening with that.
There's a lot happening. I feel like there's a lot of nervousness around AI being used in photography. So I feel like right now, because it is super popular, it's just people are using it for everything, and it's just kind of like this noise. And with every new invention, it's going to find its road, right? Where it's going to find where it's going to be helpful. I'm finding it helpful now just in like speeding up my editing. But I think that like the creativity behind creating a set, to create a photo set with propping and styling is always going to need a human touch. Like that's never going to go away.
Right.
Um, and I feel that photography is becoming more honest. And I see that sort of happening over the next 5 years. We've all sort of, especially when we talk about Instagram, the curated feed of
Hmm.
like these picture perfect images. I don't know if that is really necessary anymore. I think like there's going to be some realness that's going to emerge. Um, I'll just tell you this like quick story. I remember when I was in high school, I was going to go to college for AP English. I had done all these classes,
I
and
did not know that.
yeah, I was going to be an English lit major. I don't know.
Okay, that makes a lot of
And
sense.
I did photography like darkroom like all through high school. And I had a friend that was like, I was thinking about going to photography school. I had a friend going. He's like, "Do you want to come visit the campus with me?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And so I told another friend, "I think I might switch to photography." And he's like, "Photography's dead. Like it's dead. You're never gonna make any money from it." And I was like, "Oh man, really?" And like here we are, you know, I'm like 20 years out of almost 20 years out of high school, and like photography is never going to go away. I
No.
think it's a matter of like us figuring out how to continue to show up honestly in our business with images. And so I just kind of see it becoming more real, and I don't know. I'm excited to see where it goes. I really don't know if there's a roadmap to follow, but I'm here for the ride, basically.
I can relate to that, and sometimes I'll say that it can be a little exhausting. I hate to even say that because I'm not trying to like be a downer, but I got to be real. Like if I'm
Yeah.
in light of
Yeah.
being real, I think that it's a little exhausting to have to constantly evolve, but then it's also like really refreshing to have to constantly like evolve
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
grow and change, because I know why they probably said that, because that's like when digital cameras were coming out and people were like
Yeah.
everyone could take photos, so they thought, oh, like you're not going to need
Totally.
it. And, like I'm someone who took photography, who loves photography, who has a good camera, who has lighting, and like I can't take photos, like like I don't have the ability. So it's like, yeah, that those like abilities that you have gained, even if everything were to go to AI, to prompt AI to do what you do, you would have to be you. Like nobody would be able to do
Right.
that.
Right. Like you still need to have the human touch. And it's like it's the practice, right? Like I've been
Um,
practicing photography for 15 plus years.
yeah.
So at this point, I feel that I understand like evolving can be exhausting, and it is. And at the same time, like I just need to be true to like what I know looks good.
Yeah.
And like if that's what my goal is to make sure that I'm hitting like what looks good, what meets the client's needs, I think I'm gonna be okay
Yeah.
moving forward. It's just a matter of allowing the space to kind of
Well,
like play at the same time.
I think good things can be hard. Like I'm
Yeah,
okay. I think that's just the way it is. Like, and going through a process of like the messy middle or whatever is gonna be sometimes it is exhausting. Like I know that, it doesn't
it
sound great,
is
but it's like, but then when you get through it, it's like that much more rewarding. Um,
totally.
and for our shoot, we were kind of talking about like what kind of foliage and what kind of plants, and then I was sending you pictures of like stuff from walks, and like you had gone out and like foraged all this stuff. And like that
Yeah,
is something, and like you going out and sourcing for your photographs, what you do with that alone is just like an entire process and amazing,
of course. Yeah, it's funny because I was showing my assistant Lauren like the photos before I sent them to you, and she's like, "Where did you get all the greenery and stuff?" And I was like, "Oh, I just drove around foraging," and she was like, "That's amazing. Like nobody does that."
I
Well,
know.
that's the stuff we wanted. I'm like, I'm not gonna find that at a cut flower farm or at Ott's. Like,
Yeah.
we needed it to be like from the fields, and so I'm on the side of 724. Like,
I know.
shop
I had like showed
away.
you like the one plant that, like the formation that I always paint, and you had found like
Yep.
variations of that.
Yeah.
And like then when I went to the table, I had this video of your prop table, and I'm like, this is like the most beautiful table. Like I just want to like roll in it. Like that's what my dog would do if because
Yeah.
it's like all my
It
favorite
needs to
things.
scent all
Yeah.
over me. Yeah.
Okay, I have one more
I love
question.
that. Yeah.
Okay, so what advice would you give other creatives or small business owners looking to collaborate with a photographer to enhance their brand?
Great question. I think it's important to first and foremost to have a trust in your photographer, and feel like that you have the same core values, right? Like I think you want someone that shares some of your values and the vision that you have for like life and the branding. And you really want your photographer to be like pumped about your job, your project. And if you're not feeling that, like pass. That's
Yeah,
kind of how I take it. Like my goal is to always I want to be like your number one cheerleader when it comes to like talking about your brand and your product. And I think that's really important. Like you want someone to feel like they're on the same side with you, that they're not just like taking your money and running, you know?
right, right, right.
Um, and you want someone whose process really works for you. And so lots of photographers have different processes and systems. And then think it's important like for to ask, ask questions about their process if they're not already telling you about it.
Sure.
Um, yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions and make sure the vibe is right.
Oh, I love that. I never would have expected that, but that's so, so true. It makes the whole process so much better.
It
So,
does, it really does. You want to feel like you're in a safe place, like this is especially people who have never done professional photography. You're spending a lot of money, and I think a lot of people are really nervous about that. So, and rightfully so, like if it's the most money you've ever spent on your business in one shot, you need to make sure that you trust the person that you're, working with. So, good
yeah.
vibes or not at all.
Yeah. So do you also like turn jobs down then? I mean, I probably
Do. Yeah, yeah, I have to. I think like it's important to be honest about that. There's some people, I do discovery calls, they're free 20-minute calls. And a lot of times some calls don't turn into a job. Sometimes this person just needs 20 minutes to like ruminate with me and be like, you know what, actually I'm not ready for photography. And like if at the end of our call you've come to any kind of decision, I feel like I've done my job. Especially even if that means you're not working with me.
Yeah.
Um, if I've given you clarity, I've done my duty. And then there's just some brands like value wise we don't align, and so I do pass on them,
Hmm.
um, because I want this to be a good collaborative experience for both of us.
Hmm.
I don't want to feel like I'm like dragging through a photo shoot. That is not going to produce the best imagery, and that's unfair to the client. So even for me, like vibes are more important than money sometimes.
Yeah.
So I try to be really careful about that. I think it's important we're spending time together and we're working on
That's a lot of
something, and
time.
it's a lot of time, and I want to be just as invested as you are, and so it has to be the right fit for that to work.
Yeah, I love that advice. That's great. And highly recommend your work. And I just think you're like such a joy to work with. And I know like somebody I care so much about people succeeding with what they're doing, and especially if their values align with mine. I mean, really, it's when their values align with mine that I would like tell anyone who I've worked with, like
Yeah,
absolutely hire Tina because she's going to she's going to walk alongside you in a way that you've like never had any that kind of support, you know, and I think it's just really worthwhile, and the investment like it just pays for like you probably can't even like I would never even be able to like know exactly how much it's going to pay back on the return on
yeah,
investment, you know, because
yeah,
it's like going to be lifelong. So anyway,
yeah. I
well,
agree.
thank you for taking the time to talk with me. I know we went a
Thank
little bit
you.
over,
I'll see you in
and
30 minutes. No, I'm just
yeah.
kidding. I'll
I
be at your
can't
house.
I know I can't wait to share my photos. So yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, I will talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, Tina.